The distinctive sound of a pipe organ there, played by Lára Bryndís Eggertsdóttir. And she's the organist in a church in Kópavogur, just outside Reykjavik. I'm Helen Shaw, and you're listening to Mother's Blood, Sister's Songs, where composer Linda Buckley and I are exploring what connects Ireland and Iceland, from gender and genetics to music and culture. Now, our conversations brought us to that church one September Sunday morning and heard Lara not just playing for the service, but mentoring the young teenagers there in the community who are preparing for confirmation and showing them how to sing in harmony. Lara is a vivacious musician and singer. She comes from that community where she now lives and works, and her 3 children, including her young daughter Hekla, who has flame red hair, were all there joining in. So after the service, Linda and I sat down with Lara to talk about her passion for music and why she decided to commission Icelandic composers, including Lára Bryndís Eggertsdóttir, who we've talked to already in this series, to write for the organ.
Lára Bryndís Eggertsdóttir, and I'm the organist at Hallgrímskirkja. I have a full-time position as an organist here in Hallgrímskirkja, and it's a rather normal-sized church in the Reykjavik area. Kópavogur, this town is a suburb of Reykjavik, but they've grown together decades ago. On Sundays, I play the mass. I also have a choir that has rehearsals every week, and I play in the old people's homes and lots of stuff happening. And one thing, I don't know if you have it in Ireland, it's called baby hymns, something like that, where you have mothers or fathers bringing their babies up to maybe 1 year old and just having a really cozy time, hands-on with music, and often it's the start of hopefully a lifelong connection to the church.
And I was just going to ask you a little bit about your own background in music and how you became involved in music.
Well, my parents. My father, he has always been involved in music. My mother not, and her family not really. But my grandmother on my father's side, she grew up in an extremely musical family, and there were 11 or 12 sisters that all played music, played instruments and sang, and so it was very natural that my father, he has always played the piano, and so both my father and my grandmother, they started teaching me the piano when I was very young, and I started at the local music school when I was about 6, and I played the piano, and later I also played the violin. I hated it, so I stopped again, and I sang in a children's choir, a very good choir where I was involved in everything. I started accompanying the choir when I was maybe 12 or 13, and when I was about 18, suddenly I wanted to play the organ. It was like something I had to. I'd never tried a real organ before. It really felt like the right instrument, so I was very happy with that, and I played the organ ever since. Music is simply what I do all the time.
And we get the very strong impression that the organ is a very important instrument, obviously because the central role that the church has in choirs and bringing people into music. And I saw your children here, and even your young children were very happy to play on the lift with the organ there.
Well, the organ the pipe organ, it can really do some magic that no other instruments can. You can really do everything, and a big part of what you are doing as an organist, you have the opportunity to create almost any atmosphere, and the priest can stand there and say all sorts of things, but it's really me sitting at the organ that can make an even bigger difference. It's very easy to simply destroy a service with bad music, but you can also do wonderful things. And well, at least to me, you can't really have something big happening like a wedding or a funeral or of course Christmas and all that without organ music, because you can fill the church with big music, and it goes, I feel like it goes into the spine and just fills the whole body.
Can you give us just a little sense of describing what you were doing in the Mass today and why?
Yeah, a very typical old-fashioned Sunday Mass in Iceland would be, you have the congregation sitting there. Probably they have their hymn books and maybe they will open them, but it's very likely that they will just sit there in silence and listen to the choir sing the hymns, because the choir is there. It's their role to sing the hymns, so I'm not going to mess with that. But that's not really, at least I don't feel that's what going to Mass is about, just sitting there passively. And we really want to get these kids that are new to the church and the parents to feel like they're participating. And it's very important, a big part of that, to participate in the music, because something happens when you sing together. There are many studies on that, including there was a very famous Danish priest who wrote essays on how you can't really grasp the word of the Bible without singing it, because when it goes through the voice, it goes into the mind in a different way, and that's what I want everyone to do: sing.
What was fascinating about what you were telling me was that you spent 10 years in Denmark and you've just come back. So maybe is it a sense in which Iceland is always the drawback, particularly with 3 children, that you want them to grow up with the Icelandic culture?
Yeah, so me and my husband, who is also Icelandic, we went abroad to finish our studies. He's a medical doctor, and of course he also plays the organ. Like everyone I know, I either play the organ or sing in a choir. And it was sort of coincidence that that we went to Denmark. It could have been almost any country, but we went to Denmark. He finished his studies as a gynecologist, and when we moved, I was pregnant with our first child, and now we have 3. So I was a bit busy doing that, but also I finished my master's degree in church music at the Conservatory of Aarhus in Denmark. And then I worked for a few years as an organist in our local church there. And this thing about coming home, Denmark is very nice. Everything was actually, we had a nice house, car, children, nice school, nice work, nice music schools and everything, but it still wasn't home. So we decided to move back, and it was always the plan. And yeah, we are back home, and it so happens that it was also a coincidence that we moved back to my old neighborhood, and this church where I am organist now. I actually received my confirmation there the day after the church was inaugurated. I think it was in 1993. I can't remember really. And so we are really, really back home. And the children, they go to the local music school, where they still have many of the same teachers as when I went there. The funny thing is that those teachers, they were really old back then, but now they're not old anymore. That's very strange.
It was so interesting being in that service just now and experiencing the lovely Mass and the sense of integration of the congregation into it. Also, I was very curious about the hymn book that I was looking at and that you were using for the service, that there are hymns there from 1500s right up until very recent times. And so there's a very strong tradition of Icelandic composers writing sacred music. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about that.
Well, yes, most of the Icelandic melodies, they are either modern from the 20th century, or they are modifications of older European hymns, we could say. And there are many of the melodies that we now consider Icelandic folk melodies. They can be traced back to other melodies, maybe German hymns. And we have very active composers now, and also during the 20th century. And we will get a new hymn book next year, and there have been many people working on that for many years. That's very exciting. But we share many melodies with Denmark and the rest of Scandinavia. We actually have more American and English or British melodies than they have in Scandinavia. But I feel it's very important, this sharing. I have even experienced in Africa, climbing the Mount Kilimanjaro, and the last climb, our guide from Tanzania, suddenly he was singing a hymn I knew, in Swahili, of course, but I can join him in Icelandic. Is this feeling of sharing some culture, this Christian hymn culture, that I feel is very important.
And so we see that crossover a lot, I think. I mean, do you see something very distinctive about Icelandic hymns and Icelandic melody? Is there something quite different about that?
Well, yes, the old style hymns, I could say that back then we could take almost any European hymn melody and make it sound like something very Icelandic. And it has to do with the style of singing back then. It was something we actually still have. It's the quint song singing in the parallel fifths, and also the not singing in Phrygian and
modal Lydian modes.
And there is a special sound to it. And many modern composers, you can hear this sound coming through. And it was actually interesting. I made a project where I had several Icelandic composers write music for the organ, and I feel that you can hear this distinctive Icelandic sound, except one of the composers, he is actually born in England. Then I actually got commissioned organ music from 7 composers. So I contacted several composers, and I ended up with having seven composers that participated, and I had, of course, no idea what would come out of it, and I thought, maybe it's something even someone else will like to use and play, but I started getting such fantastic music that I realized I had to publish both a recording and the music. The sheet music is also published in Denmark, and so it has become quite popular in Iceland among organists, all of the organists in Iceland.
There seems like such a healthy, thriving scene at the moment of a younger generation of composers here as well. I'm thinking of people like Anna Thorvaldsdóttir and Daniel Bjarnason. And what strikes me about their music is that it creates a very evocative sense of atmosphere and a strong sense of where they come from. Do you think that is something that is quite prevalent in the younger generation of composers here, that there's a sense of creation of atmosphere in the music?
Yeah, I agree on that. It's very easy to make a cliche out of it, that you have this stereotypical picture of Iceland, some bad weather, black and white picture, and of course then you get a young fancy composer that writes music that fits into this picture. But it isn't a cliche. It is our reality in many ways, and so it feels very natural, and of course it affects you.
And we have Lára Bryndís Eggertsdóttir here on your record release. I'm very interested in her because of her background in Rímur, but also in contemporary classical music. Do you feel like she brings in those folk influences into the writing?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially one movement of her organ pieces, it's really, it combines all of this atmosphere thing and the old Icelandic Rímur style, and so I knew her choral music before, and she also incorporates folk music into that. And let's just say that I was not disappointed in her organ music. It's wonderful. And one thing that the Danish people thought was very interesting, that when I got 7 composers, 3 of them were female, and they were like, wow, were you really, you wanted to have equal? And no, I just contacted the composers I wanted to contact. So the female composers maybe are more, I don't know if there are more of them in Iceland than in Denmark, or...
And do you think here there has been a sense of kind of gender blindness where it hasn't been considered so segregated as this is a female composer, this is a male composer? It's the sense that there's just equality and it's all good music.
Well, I'm lucky enough to be young enough not to have experienced that. I'm from this generation that thinks it's a proper president is a female president. And so my generation had to discover that, oh, a man can actually be a president. Ooh, okay, if he tries hard. But I'm sure that was not the case a couple of generations ago.
So your daughter's name, I mean, because like it connects to a piece that Linda's done, Hekla.
Yeah.
That's when I think I heard your first piece and actually discovered maybe 5 years ago, that it was a volcano. But we're doing this project about Ireland and Iceland. I actually think there's more red hair in Iceland than in Ireland. But your daughter has this beautiful red hair.
Yeah, so her name is Hekla, and actually her full name is Hekla Sigríður Ágústsdóttir. And Sigríður is my mother's name, and it's very typical that Icelandic children, that they get a name from their grandparents. So my grandmother's name was Lara. So my name is Lara, and my siblings have 2 more grandparents' names, and her red hair, we were actually a bit shocked when her big brother was born. He had very red hair, we thought, but it's nothing compared to Hekla. But the thing is, both me and my husband, we had grandmothers with red hair, and somehow it mixed up very nicely in our children. And we had decided her name, Hekla, the volcano, before she was born. Then when she was born, there's a lot of red hair coming out. And, what have we done? But it fits very nicely to her temperament and everything.
Well, 5 years ago, I was working on a residency in Lugavat, so I was looking out at Hekla when I was working on music.
Was born.
Really? Oh. Beautiful place. So I would look out onto the lake, and then I would look out onto the volcano, and it really inspired a lot of the music that I wrote at that time and since then.
So my grandmother on my father's side, she was born in Laugarvatn, this place in the countryside, and had all these sisters, and I think there were 12. I can never remember, and one brother. And this year, 2010, when my daughter was born, we discovered that there were, I think, 7 or 8 other girls born to the family that were called Hekla. But it's a coincidence, I think.
and that's Lára Bryndís Eggertsdóttir. And we've added some links to her work and to that collection of new music she commissioned to our website, mothersbloodsistersongs.com. Thanks for listening.